Welcome back. A large fire engulfed one of the world's largest wholesale markets in Mexico City. Videos showed towering flames and columns of smoke rising from the Centro de Abastos in Mexico City, which is a sprawling complex providing food products and groceries to markets around the Mexican capital. However, the market's management said in a statement today that the blaze had been extinguished and businesses were open again. Over in Chile, where the country has signed new laws and allocated $1.5 billion to fight crime and skyrocketing perceptions of insecurity, and a day after the third police officer in less than a month was killed on duty. Chilean President Gabriel Boric signed off on 4 new laws that the government says will help fight organized crime and drug trafficking. The measures include criminalizing extortion as well as increased penalties for kidnapping and some instances of firearm possession. The law has been criticized by human rights groups, including Amnesty International, which issued a press release stating the law could increase police abuse and impunity and is an enormous step back in terms of advancing police reforms. 2 people have been killed in a shooting attack after gunmen opened fire on a car driving in the occupied West Bank. It comes as tensions between Israel and the Palestinians intensifies. The Israeli military said the shooting was carried out on a vehicle at the Hamra junction, and IDF soldiers were searching the area. The Magan David Adam ambulance service said that when it arrived at the scene, it found a wrecked Israeli vehicle with 3 women, 2 of whom died and a third seriously wounded. Several explosions rocked the Gaza Strip earlier today as Israel's military hit sites in Gaza in retaliation for rocket attacks it blamed on the Islamist group Hamas, as tensions following police raids this week on the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem threatened to spiral out of control. Loud blasts rocked different areas of Gaza as Israel said its jets hit targets including tunnels and weapons manufacturing sites of Hamas in southern Lebanon. The strikes came in response to rocket attacks from Lebanon towards northern Israeli areas, which Israeli officials blamed on Hamas. The military said 34 rockets were launched from Lebanon, of which 25 were intercepted by air defense systems. It is the biggest such attack since 2006, when Israel fought a war with the heavily armed Hezbollah movement. Meanwhile, the United Nations has condemned multiple rockets fired into northern Israel from Lebanon and urged all actors to exercise maximum restraint. UN spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric urged all parties to avoid any unilateral action that could further escalate the situation.
We condemned the multiple rockets being fired from Lebanon into northern Israel today. We urge all actors to exercise maximum restraint. The UN interim force in Lebanon remains in contact with authorities on both sides of the blue line, and we urge the parties to liaise with our peacekeepers and avoid any unilateral action that could further escalate the situation. Our message, which is being delivered by the head of the mission, Major General Lazzaro, who's the head of UNIFIL, is that given the extreme seriousness of the situation, we urge restraint and we urge the parties to avoid any further escalation.
U.S. State Department spokesperson Vedant Patel said the U.S. is concerned by the scenes of violence out of Jerusalem, adding that the administration is in regular touch with Israeli partners and the Palestinian Authority. Israeli police clashed with Palestinians at Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque earlier this week after the arrest and removal of more than 350 people in an Israeli police raid at the compound. The confrontations during the Muslim holy month of Ramadan and on the eve of the Jewish Passover holiday triggered a cross-border exchange of fire in Gaza and stoked fears of further violence.
we are concerned by the scenes out of Jerusalem, and it is our viewpoint that it is absolutely vital that the sanctity of holy sites be preserved. We emphasize the importance of upholding the historic status quo at the holy sites in Jerusalem, and any unilateral action that jeopardizes the status quo to us is unacceptable, and we call for restraint, coordination, and calm during the holiday season. We are in constant and regular touch with our Israeli partners, as well as the Palestinian Authority, about these issues, and so we'll continue to raise them directly. Michelle, we condemn the launch of rockets from Lebanon and Gaza at Israel. Our commitment to Israel's security is ironclad, and we recognize Israel's legitimate right to defend itself against all forms of aggression. What you just heard me say is that we have a very clear viewpoint on this, which is that Israel has legitimate security concerns, and it has every right to defend itself from these legitimate security concerns. I don't have any specific diplomatic communications to read out or offer perspective on, but the Israel has legitimate security concerns and has every right to defend itself.
Senior U.S. lawmaker Michael McCaul said he was doing everything possible to speed up the delivery of weapons to Taiwan amid heightened tensions with China, following Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen's meeting with U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy earlier the week. Now, Taiwan, which China claims as its own territory, has since last year complained of delays to U.S. weapons deliveries, such as Stinger anti-aircraft missiles, as manufacturers turn supplies to Ukraine to support its defense against the Russian invasion.
Loving country that respects human rights, and we do not want war. We pursue.
正如尤院长刚才所提及的，在亚洲这边，我们也有中共他们。
Press conference. Now I would like to invite all the distinguished guests for a group photos again. Thank you. 一个赞的手势。
Yeah, let me just say on the weapons issue, I sign off on those deliveries, and we are doing everything in our power to expedite this. I know the delegation, I think we're in broad agreement that this absolutely needs to be done to provide the deterrence for Taiwan to promote peace in the region. Peace through strength is real. So there are several things we can do to expedite the delivery of these weapons, which I would argue is critically important in our deterrence and the deterrence factor to avoid a conflict. As Ami Berra said, nobody wants conflict. We want peace and prosperity, and we want to do everything we can to deter a very aggressive nation, Communist China, from ever thinking about landing on the shores of this beautiful island. Because that would be a serious mistake for everybody.
Nuclear envoys of the United States, South Korea, and Japan have condemned North Korea's recent missile launches and expressed deep concern over its malicious cyber activities to support its weapons programs amid Pyongyang's rising nuclear and missile threats. Kim Gun, South Korea's chief nuclear negotiator, held a trilateral meeting with his U.S. and Japanese counterparts Sung Kim and Takahiro Funakoshi in Seoul, and said North Korea's nuclear ambition was nothing more than a self-destructive boomerang, shattering its economy.
I want to emphasize to DG Funakoshi.
North Korea is misguiding its people to believe that nuclear weapons are a magic wand that can solve all of its problems. On the contrary, North Korea's nuclear obsession is nothing more than a self-destructive boomerang that destroys the future of all North Koreans. It is shattering its economy, undermining its security, and aggravating its isolation. We need to make sure that its provocations never go unpunished. We will effectively counter North Korea's future provocations and cut their revenue streams that fund these illegal activities. Such efforts deserve our special attention since North Korea is gearing up to reopen its borders.
Pyongyang's reckless behavior, accompanied by threatening rhetoric, demonstrates again that the DPRK represents one of the most serious security challenges in the region and beyond. With its pursuit of UN-prohibited WMD and ballistic missiles and its malicious cyber program that targets countries and individuals around the globe, the DPRK threatens the security and prosperity of the entire international community.
Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has vowed to support storm-ravaged Quebec after a fierce ice storm struck the region and left over 1 million people without power. Southern Quebec was lashed by a fierce ice storm earlier this week, bringing down trees, damaging homes and vehicles. According to officials, much of the power outages are a result of trees that came down in the storm. Authorities hope to restore power to most residents within 24 hours.
It's a very difficult moment for Montrealers, for people across the region who have been hit by this ice storm. Obviously, the power being down for so many folks, the trees coming down, hurting buildings and cars and whatnot, is of course an ongoing concern. It's important for people to stay safe. And it's important that people do what we always do in times of difficulty. Neighbors will be there for neighbors. People will help out and support. I will be sitting down with the Premier in a couple of hours to talk about anything that we can do. I know the province and the City of Montreal have a tremendous amount of great teams on the ground doing work. Hydro-Quebec is on it. But we will be there to support as necessary. I think the most important thing is to see yet again what happens in times of difficulty, neighbors helping neighbors. If someone's got power and the other don't, we see them helping out. This is going to be a time for us all to pull together, to be safe and to make it through as we always do.
Yet another deadly tornado ripped through the American Midwest this week, this time southeastern Missouri. According to officials, several people were killed in Bollinger County in the pre-dawn twister. Aerial footage shows the extent of the damage, with roofs sheared off houses, trees splintered, and power lines downed. Missouri Governor Mike Parson said the rural area faces a long journey ahead toward recovery, and added that President Joe Biden had called to offer help. More than 30 people were killed over the previous weekend as tornadoes tore through multiple states in the South and Mideast. Our Washington, D.C. correspondent Maria Bird joins me now for more. Welcome to the program, Maria. Thank you for being here. Yet another tornado. Give us an update of what the situation is on the ground.
Good evening. Yes, it is quite a devastating time as it relates to the weather here in the United States. When you look at what happened in Missouri, you have about 5 individuals that have been reported to have been killed as a result of the tornado. We also know that this tornado has gone as far as from the northeast down to the southeast. Even Delaware and as far as Arkansas have seen these type of kind of events with this weather, specifically the tornadoes. Causing these small microcosm of devastating events in counties across the U.S., and specifically in that northeast to southeast region.
And are there any other casualties and fatalities that you've heard of?
At this time, in some of the smaller tornado areas, stricken areas, you've not heard as many fatalities. You've just heard of major devastation. Obviously, the president and FEMA have made way onto the ground to ensure that they are there to support with these natural disasters, and many of them have been already called for a state of emergencies. And we know the Midwest is prone, obviously, to tornadoes this time of year, but we have not yet heard of any other beyond the 5 in Missouri.
And any other responses that you've heard, Maria, from authorities responding to the situation?
Yes, we have obviously a very strong emergency relief system. The president has obviously offered up any help that he can provide from the federal government. So you'll begin to see FEMA, which is our emergency response teams, on the ground helping to obviously clear out the devastation, look for food and housing, very basic essentials that many people are going to be without because many of these tornadoes have taken out entire homes. And so that's going to be the first order of business. Then they'll begin to clear out the communities of the debris and begin to try to rebuild. But it'll be a long process for the rebuilding.
Maria, I'm going to completely switch gears here, but also a matter of national interest. The Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich is in detention in Moscow, as you all know, for what Russia calls spy charges. Now, how is the United States responding to this unlawful arrest?
Well, the U.S., the Secretary of State Blinken has come out and said that it is no way that he was spying. He has already come out in support of the detainee. And so that is the Wall Street Journal reporter. So that's number one, that we know that the U.S. is supporting him in every way that they can. We also know there have been talks between Russian foreign ministers and the U.S. State Department regarding the release. We also, must remember that Paul Whelan is still detained. And this was obviously has been even longer than the previous detainee, Brittany Griner, which was released here recently. So the U.S. has quite a bit of negotiations and has obviously been in talks with Russia for quite some time as it relates to detainees. And so this just adds to the conversation and really to see what the U.S. can do to try to campaign for the release of this reporter.
So the efforts underway to get him released from detention do include negotiations between the two parties. Is that correct?
They do include negotiations. I think at this time they're going to focus more on the fact that they do not believe he was spying. I think they're going to focus on the facts that exist and try to see if that bears any benefit for them before they begin to talk about anything further with negotiation.
And finally, my last question to you, Maria. We saw the efforts the United States put into release basketball star Brittany Griner, who you mentioned just before. Have there been talks from both parties that Russia and the U.S. are to undergo some sort of prisoner swap?
Well, the prisoner swaps are always very difficult. We know that it was almost 10 months before Brittany Griner was released. And we know that not only did the U.S. government campaign for her release, but we know the entire U.S. community, especially the basketball community, stood strong for her and advocated for her release. And so that was a very unique case. We know that Paul Whelan was in before Brittany Griner, so it's going to be very difficult for the U.S. to be able to negotiate a prisoner swap, and they've already done that once and received quite a bit of mixed reviews from the American public on the prisoner swap with Brittany Griner. So this is going to be, I think, much longer. Potentially, we're not going to see that immediately due to the fact that we are just a little bit more than a week into this detainment of the Wall Street Journal reporter. But we could see, I guess, as it progresses, we could see those type of conversations. But again, we must remember that Paul Whelan is still imprisoned, and there's not been a prisoner swap discussed on his behalf either.
Slip in one more question now. What is the public's reaction?
The public's reaction, I think, is a bit taken back. I think that we obviously still have an ambassador for Russia with the U.S. We know that obviously the U.S.-Russian relations have been a bit tense over the past few years, but I think that they were a bit surprised by this Wall Street Journal reporter, who's a business reporter, who had been there for some time, having to face these type of these charges that they obviously are supporting him and saying that they don't believe are accurate. So I think that the question now is, what is the level of intensity of the U.S.-Russia relations, and really how is the U.S. going to respond to this, and really what is going to be the next steps as it relates to how the U.S. will continue to have foreign relations with Russia.
All right, thank you very much. That's Maria Bird, our Washington correspondent. Now, moving on to the World Health Organization, which is celebrating 75 years since its foundation was established today. The United Nations approved the establishment of an autonomous international health organization in 1945, and on April 7, 1948, the World Health Organization was formed, with the first meeting of the World Health Assembly taking place on July 24th of that year. Since then, the UN agency has played a leading role in multiple public health achievements, including the eradication of smallpox and the development of an Ebola vaccine. More recently, the WHO was a key player in the COVID-19 vaccine's global access scheme, which gave low to middle-income countries equitable access to coronavirus vaccines and tests. Currently led by Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, Geneva-based, who has 194 member states and 150 field offices worldwide. The anniversary of the WHO's establishment is celebrated every year as the World Health Day. When we return, London zoo animals are not left out on the Easter celebration as the zookeepers surprise them with Easter eggs filled with treats. Details in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. And back here in Africa, in Uganda, urgent global crises like the war in Ukraine, the earthquake in Turkey, and the drought in East Africa mean there's less food aid for people like Konga, a South Sudanese single mother living in a refugee camp in northern Uganda. Luckily for her and others, the elements in Uganda have not been as merciless as in the Horn of Africa, and rain means growth. But by how much? Take a look at this.
Watering the neat lines of green salad leaves outside her thatched home, Susan Konga is preparing her kitchen garden for the next harvest. This year, the success of our tireless cultivation will be put to the ultimate test: complete self-sufficiency. A roughly 50% shortfall in funds this year has forced the United Nations World Food Programme, WFP, to cut off the food supply for hundreds of thousands of refugees in Uganda, the country hosting more than any other in Africa. After 6 years in Uganda, Konga must now rely entirely on the maize, cassava, and salad leaves grown in her small vegetable patch. The abrupt change in policy will make it difficult for her to adjust. Konga worries she won't be able to grow enough surplus produce to sell to pay for her two nieces' school fees and other basic household supplies like soap.
We are already aware, they already told us that they are going to give food according to categories. Not everyone will get food. But I plead to them, they should at least give food for everyone. Since we are not yet stable, the food should continue for everyone at least for more 2 or 3 years to come. Then there, at least we can, in the middle, we can plan for what to do for an individual. But now it is so abrupt that we cannot do it because all of us are vulnerable. Nobody can stand on his own.
WFP says vulnerable refugees such as new arrivals, the sick and elderly will continue to receive emergency food aid, but the organization's $180 million funding shortfall means others will have to be weaned off it.
Some refugees who, given emergency support that they received when they came to Uganda, and this emergency support is very important because it enables a refugee survive when they need it the most. There cannot be resilience if you do not receive emergency support when you're hit by crisis. But these people have been able to link into livelihood interventions, to work with our various partners, and be able to stand on their own and be sustainable. And this is the third category that we shall be supporting and winning of food assistance.
Owners are having to make very difficult decisions because the needs are enormous globally. We, of course, have known for some time about the impact of the war in Ukraine. Earlier this year, we had the earthquake in Turkey and Syria. But as far as Uganda is concerned, we're not only competing for visibility on a global scale, we're competing for visibility in the region as well.
The rains have been good so far, but for Conga and others like her, surviving in the periods between harvest may be a struggle while they pray that the rains do not fail.
If you want to go far in life, focus on the positives and surround yourself with people who want to see you win. This is the view of Edo-born Italian chef and winner of the 11th edition of MasterChef cooking competition in Italy, Tracy Eboibodin. While speaking with Channel's television anchor Ijeoma Onyeto, she also harps on the need for Nigerian government to create an enabling environment for young talents to thrive.
Yeah, I'll just say, we know racism is everywhere. It's not only in Italy, it's not only in Verona, it's everywhere. But there are also so many positive sides. You need to concentrate on the positive side. If I meet somebody tomorrow, I'm just going to look at me like, I don't like you because you're black. Okay, bye. I can't change myself, I'm black, so it's not my problem, it's your problem. So your problem can be my problem. So I tell you, concentrate on the positive side. Stay around people that makes you grow, that makes your light shine. And that's what I did. In these 17 years, today I have, like my friend who wrote me to MasterChef, she's Italian, said I have people that love me, so that's all. Yeah. When I went home to Nigeria, I even went to the parliament at Abuja, and they asked me a similar question, and I said, we need to educate people, to educate to eating, showing them the good side even of the overseas, for those who wants to go outside Nigeria, but you need to give them, a country where they don't have to feel that need of going out. Like the cooking, as I said before, in Lagos, I saw there's so many Italians, so many Libanese, it's so many people from outside that comes to Nigeria, that works there. So give them the chance. It's like chance. Put on more culinary school. Because I saw so many talents, because I went to different schools, when there was these girls, they were speaking of food. I did this, I did this cake, their eyes were shining. Oh my God, give them the chance to show what they are able to do.
To catch the full interview with Tracy Eboibodin, to watch Diaspora Network on Saturday at 7:30 p.m. As Christians celebrate Good Friday around the world to commemorate the crucifixion of Jesus, former leader of Sinn Féin, Jerry Adams, hailed the success of the Good Friday Agreement, saying there are people alive today who wouldn't be if the peace deal hadn't been reached. The 10th of April will mark the 25th anniversary of the accord, which largely brought an end to decades of bloodshed in Northern Ireland. In April 1998, British Prime Minister Tony Blair and his Irish counterpart, Bertie Ahern, helped Irish nationalists and British unionists craft an intricate power-sharing deal that paved the way for militants on both sides to lay down arms. Jerry Adams was another key player in the 1998 talks as head of the political wing of the Irish Republican Army.
To actually achieve a way of ending the war was probably the big achievement of the Good Friday Agreement, that there are people now alive and have been spared the awfulness of conflict, who otherwise may well be dead or have been injured. And I was reading that 500,000 people have been born since the Good Friday Agreement was agreed. So that's 500,000 people, unless they've had personal or family experience of the conflict, know nothing about it at a personal level. So that's also a great boon, and a space has been opened up where people can moderate our differences politically. 25 years into a peace process, and perfect though it may be, it's better than what was there before. So, the harking back thing always is a bit frustrating. We need, whatever happened in the past happened, and it shouldn't stop us from doing what we need to do for the future. So at some point, the interrogation of these issues need to be about tomorrow, need to be about what happens next, need to be how do we get from where we are now into an even better place than we are at the moment.
Meanwhile, thousands of Muslim worshippers crossed West Bank checkpoints into Jerusalem today to attend Friday Ramadan prayers in the Old City's Al-Aqsa Mosque. There were separate lanes for men and women who all underwent security checks before entering the Holy City. Israel's coordinator of government activities in the territories announced last month that Palestinian women and children under 12 and men over 55 would be allowed to cross to Jerusalem today without a permit to mark Ramadan rituals. And finally on the program, endangered Sumatran tigers, meerkats, and squirrel monkeys joined in the Easter excitement activities at the London Zoo. Footage released by the zoo shows the animals foraging and hunting for eggs, just like children enjoying the Conservation Zoo's egg hunt. 9-month-old critically endangered Sumatran tiger cubs Crispin and Zach played with giant cardboard eggs inside their enclosure. London Zoo manager Dan Simmons said in a statement that the facility is always exploring creative new ways for the animals to practice their natural foraging and hunting behaviors, adding that Easter provides the perfect opportunity to offer up some enriching egg-based animal activities. It says it is also a great way for visitors to learn about different animals and their natural skills. Well, don't you just love it? That's the program for today and for the week. We hope you have enjoyed it thoroughly. From the production team and myself, Susan Ilian, have a great Good Friday and a good weekend.